Have you heard of dyspraxia?
No idea what dyspraxia is. Yeah.
No.
No, I haven't.
Not at all?
No.
I suppose I have a rough idea.
No. You don't know what it is?
much about it, no.
No. Dyspraxia. Have you heard of dyspraxia?
No, to be honest, I don't.
I do not actually.
No.
I've heard of it, I don't know.
Nope. No.
So I've wondered if I am dyspraxic, but I've never had a formal diagnosis. And I suppose I don't know enough about it, really.
Is this happening more often, or are we just more aware of it?
There is still a huge gap in a lot of people's knowledge. General public would have not much idea.
Don't worry about the last corner.
So, it used to be called dyspraxia, and many families still refer to it as dyspraxia because it's a much nicer term, which just means basically difficulty with motor planning or with movement. But in the past, they were referred to as clumsy children, and then it evolved to talking about DAMP, so children with difficulty with attention, motor control and perception. And now it's referred to as DCD, Developmental Coordination Disorder.
Daniel was diagnosed with dyspraxia in May last year.
What led us to it was we'd noticed a few things. Daniel was a little bit different from our older two children. A little bit of Dr. Google and looking online. Kath, my wife, spent a bit of time having a look and sent me something one day that says, "Who does this remind you of?" And it obviously it looked was like Daniel.
When did you first find out that you had dyspraxia?
When we went to, I forgot what it was, it's like a doctor.
Right.
And we got tested and they said I had dyspraxia, and that's when I knew I had dyspraxia.
Can you give some examples of what you would say to a young child?
Well, we would talk about how they've got a clever brain that helps them to remember, to think, to figure out and to imagine. And then they're able to link that to the different body parts and what they are wanting to do with the different tasks and routines that they are engaged in during their day-to-day life. Then we support them with their, next steps and how they can do that. Because if they have an understanding of what that means for them and for their body, then they're able to use that in so many different settings.
At home, it was up and down. There was good times there's great times with Daniel, and sometimes he can be a little short-tempered, of course, as he gets anxious and things. There were some tough times, and engaging with his siblings was
Quite difficult.
Was quite difficult. When he was first diagnosed, it was.
I think it was a bit of a relief for me, and I think for Daniel, he had a name.
Does dyspraxia stop you from doing anything?
No.
Does it affect your body?
Yep.
Well, the best way that we've had dyspraxia suggested as to how it works is if you write with your normal hand and you write a sentence with your normal hand, you're not thinking about the act of writing. But then if you write with your opposite hand, you actually have to think about the actions of the writing. And that is what it's like for dyspraxia with everything. that they are having to use the rest of their brain to actually think about every activity. And if you imagine that multiplied by everything around you, the exhaustion that you must face as someone with dyspraxia, or just the amount that you have to do just to be able to go through is something that's admirable.
Do you like going to school?
Yeah.
What's the best part about school?
The best part is doing writing.
So often the children that are not picked up until 7 or 8 are the children that are really struggling with writing. So not just the physical task of forming the letters, but also trying to plan the ideas and coordinating, thinking about the idea, writing it, and actually feeling confident about doing it. If it's difficult, a lot of children will try and avoid it.
The very first thing we brought in was timetabling. So every single day he knows exactly what's coming up, especially for him, and also for what his brother and sister are doing and where he needs to be. And that seemed to bring the anxieties right down.
The more in advance you can have a day-to-day, hour-by-hour schedule of what's going to happen, the easier it is to manage, because there's less for him to have to think about and absorb, and the variances around that are much easier for him to navigate.
Do you know how many letters there are in the alphabet?
Is it 27?
You're very close. It's 26.
What?
Wow.
How are they so close?
The preferred form of intervention is task-based. So we're looking at a goal that they want to reach, an occupation that they want to take part in. So it could be riding a bicycle, it could be learning to brush their teeth, how to eat in a manner that is neat. And any of those sorts of day-to-day activities, sport-related, academic-related, it is important to be task-based and to provide an environment for the child where it's easy for them to learn. So it'll be a structured environment. They will be given time to complete the task, to learn how to perform it, and to do it over and over in a very repetitive manner.
For art yesterday, or on Friday, we did some art that was animal, and I did an alley chicken.
Wow.
Elephant chicken.
That would have been an interesting beast.
Yep. But people say it's a true animal. It's a real animal, and I'm like, it is.
Of our 3 children, he is the best reader. So his enjoyment for reading and his aptitude is, especially his enjoyment for it. If we go for a drive somewhere, he's always the one in the car who's got a book with him to take on the journey. He's always the one who wants to read. In fact, our other children could do to learn from Daniel on his reading. He's fantastic.
He could be an example to them.
He could be an example, that's right.
I like reading books here and books back there.
Yes, that would be very cool. It's a very cool chair.
It is. You are such an amazing student, Danny. Always smiling and giving things 100%. It has been a joy to be your student teacher.
What a lovely thing to say about you.
It is.
Yes, motivation is a big thing for children, and that's where we were talking earlier, is the importance of any intervention being client-based and individuals, and using their interests and their likes to help motivate them.
Righto, Daniel, we're on. We're going to make pizzas.
Yep.
So you're the cook and I'm the helper. So we're going to spread that out all over it. Doing pretty well there. Just fill in all the gaps.
Fill in all the gaps there.
Yep.
And then there.
You'll be able to make these when you go home.
Yep. But we don't have any pastry.
I'm sure Mum can do something.
Oh, the
A
cheese.
bit more round.
A lot of cheese is there. So I might switch it.
Because he doesn't necessarily store that memory in his brain in the same way as you or I would, what would happen is some weeks he'd go to a swimming lesson and be fantastic, and you'd go, wow, he'd be the best of the class. the next week he'd go and it'd be like he remembered none of what was, and
We'd
it
either
would
have
be
standing
like
in the pool or swimming in a circle, just not being able to do what was asked.
Got a sport you like to do?
No.
No.
I do have a hobby.
What's your hobby?
Being lazy.
Being lazy.
So the behaviour, it's up and down, and we're working on emotions at the moment, sort of talking things out, as opposed to when he hits out, saying to him, you know, you're not angry, you're frustrated. What are you frustrated about? What can we do?
Well, and the part is also tricky is that outside influences have a strong impact on Daniel. So he can have had a terrible day at school and we won't know. And so he has a massive impact on him, but we're only dealing with the things around us that we see. So we don't actually know why he's more anxious or more aggressive or what, but we just have to, we have to know that something's happened. We just have to assume something's happened. The key for us is always that Daniel's a great kid. He's a nice kid.
He doesn't mean to
He's
be.
very loving. He means well, and so you've always got to just remember that it's not his, it's not his fault. He's dealing with a lot,
So most of the kids I see with dyspraxia, if we're doing an activity I'll start the activity with them, and as long as they're doing the movements I want them to do, they can follow their imagination with it. And I can use the same activity with 20 kids and they will all come up with something different and something amazing. And the way they think about what they're doing is very different to if I had a child who didn't have dyspraxia doing the activity. So one of the things I would say is it's not a disability unless you're in an environment that's not supporting you.
What do you think you'd like to be when you grow up?
I really want to be like a police or like maybe those people people that like if their computer's broken, they can come to me and I could fix it because I fixed my computer I fixed my computer on Tuesday.
Did you? What was wrong with it?
Yeah, one of the keys fell out.
It was a bombshell for sure. What we found is obviously it takes patience. It takes time to work with your family and understand the different. It's going to be a slightly different family dynamic that's going to be there, and you need to sort of adjust and make sure everyone's loved for. And
You just got to try everything. Google, join groups, try everything.
And certainly we also found that some things that were suggested do not work. And so it's the things you got to find what works for you guys practically that can be easily rolled out, that's going to make differences. And something might make a difference today and not make a difference tomorrow, but that doesn't mean you need to stop it, you just need to persevere.
We've got to put spikes above the window there.
That's why they roost.
Oh, yeah, we got them roosting on our pergola. Yeah.
The same thing. Look like twins.
Yes.
Always get mistaken for each other.
My daughter-in-law in Scotland, a bit complicated, because her brother's wife is a twin. And
especially with a person who's got dyspraxia, they probably would have struggled with their social life since they're a child. And so when they go through their teenage years, I think they've already got that sort of past experience of not being able to keep up with their friends, not being able to be included in sports team, things like that. And so eventually what I've seen in a lot of the teenagers is, the teenagers with dyspraxia, is that, they become quite introverted, especially if they don't get the right help they need, and they just sort of give up on doing anything that requires them to use their physical skills. And so, their social life just becomes a lot more sort of limited, which is really sad to see.
It's lovely. I really like that. With my very short music career at school, I learnt to play that, but it was a long time ago.
I haven't learned the other hand.
I'm really good at this though.
You're a master at
Your
that.
turn.
A reduction in expectation initially.
I was going to say, yeah.
The pressure was taken straight off him, whereas before he would be quite forcibly encouraged at school, maybe, to reach certain targets or get to certain achievements. But once we realised he was having problems, having issues, that was all just back that off straight away, and had an almost immediate effect on him, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also the effect on us, which sounds ridiculous, but the anxiety and the concern for him was huge. And I mean, we were just so worried about him. So once we knew what was going on, it was like somebody had lifted a weight off our shoulders, because then we could research, we could understand, and we could support him. So I think that was a pretty immediate change, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then we started with things like, so he wouldn't eat at school. Eating's always been a challenge because he doesn't actually recognise the sensation of hunger, which is all linked to the dyspraxia. And so he would get to the point of no return in terms of his hunger. Then his body would go, oh, actually, I'm hungry, and we'd had a massive meltdown. So the minute we understood all that, we were able to introduce eating habits. So we'd send him with lots of nibbly things to school. The teachers were asked to supervise him at morning tea and then at lunchtime to make sure he had actually eaten something. He had to sit by a teacher because otherwise he wouldn't focus on eating.
I guess with dyspraxia and having to, overcome challenges that normally people wouldn't usually have to face during the day, I become very hardworking. And when I see somebody struggle, like if they can't do something, like if they're trying to, for example, build something out of Lego or do a jigsaw puzzle and they're struggling, I'll go over there and I'll try to help, because I understand how frustrating it is, and I can understand how it takes a lot out of you.
But over the last 16 years that I've been working with children and adults who have dyspraxia, we're seeing more and more sensory issues come to the forefront, and that's where the people have difficulty when they take in the sensory information, so visual, auditory, tactile, movement, etc. It gets muddled up on the way to the organising part of the brain. So people can become overloaded with sensory issues, or they can misinterpret the sensory environment before they even get to the part of planning and organising a response.
Yeah, I have very sensitive skin and hearing, so something that could be like a normal just touch to you could be excruciatingly painful for me. And I have really sensitive hearing as well, and I remember this one time when we went over to England, my grandpa had these deer scarers in the front garden, and normally the frequency is so high that the human hearing can't hear it, but I went outside and my ears were just ringing, it was so just frustrating, it just wouldn't stop. So we had to go outside and turn the deer sensors off because it was really irritating my ears, and nobody else could hear anything.
The therapists were all saying to us, look, dance is great for helping these coordination skills because it makes the brain function and uses the two sides of the brain to different coordination movements. So he started dancing and absolutely loved it. I think he loved the social piece, but he also enjoyed the freedom of being able to move. Initially, it was very challenging for him to do anything that was structured, but over the years, he's become really quite proficient at it, and he's worked really hard at it, and he's dedicated at it.
5, 6, 7, 8. The lips, the teeth, the tip of the tongue, the tip of the tongue, the leaves, the lips.
Yeah, I've been performing really ever since I can remember. It's my release. I just like the idea of just being on stage, because I can just be whoever I want to be, and I don't have to worry about people judging me or making fun of me, because, you know, it's just something I love.
Definitely. He's been with us for quite some time, and he's absolutely part of our team. He's fun, he is, you know, he can be a little bit chatty sometimes and loud, but it's awesome. He's absolutely part of our team.
That sounds very normal to me.
Yeah, normal little 14-year-old boy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How has having dyspraxia altered the way you teach Adam?
It has altered the way that I teach him, in that I give him things prior, so that he's never in a situation where he is cold reading and reading things off the spot.
Surprises.
No surprises.
Well
However, very well prepared. I did communicate with him. We've just had auditions just last weekend, and I said to him, do you trust me enough that, you know, you can do this audition without having seen the text before? Because I also didn't want to put him in a situation where the others have to, you know, read it straight off the spot, because it was an audition situation. And he said, I trust you, it's okay. And he nailed it. Wow. So much so he got the part.
It takes them longer, they have to process each movement. For us, it's very automatic. If we see a ball coming towards us, we'll reach out quickly and we'll grab it. But for them, they'll have to stop. They'll have to think, that ball's coming towards me. I need to lift up my left hand. I need to open my hand. I need to close my hand. They have to process each step and think about that very carefully. For us, it's automatic, and we don't have to stop and think about it. So that's what slows them down.
Do people make fun of you?
Not so much anymore, because I just don't care. Like, you could just come up to me and say, hey, you're an idiot, and I'm like, I don't really care. I don't know you. Your opinion means nothing to me. But as a kid, I did get bullied a lot, and it did affect me very much so.
How did you cope with the bullying?
To be honest, I really didn't. I just, I would have days when I would just break down, and I would just run to the bathroom and spend like hours, like a whole lunch times in bathrooms, just bawling my eyes out. It was not good. Like I said, I usually isolate myself and that kind of stuff, but there's always been this one person, and her name's Hannah. And I met her the very first day of school when I came to New Zealand. And it was lunchtime or morning tea, and I asked her to sit next to me. And I was about 4 or 5, and we just instantly clicked. She's my sister from another mister. She's everything to me. Like, I love her to pieces, and I honestly don't know where I would be without her today. She's everything to me.
It's tricky because the butter sticks to the knife.
Yeah.
Put your fingers on there and go like that, and don't worry about that bit, and use that for your measure.
Oh, that's smart, actually. This is not going well so far.
How do you see him moving forward into the adult world?
He sees himself going flatting.
That's wonderful. I think that's probably the first step, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. Look, I think with the right support network, and as he builds his confidence, certainly I think he can go on, and there's no reason why he can't go flatting and doing whatever else he wants to do. I mean, in this life, you can achieve anything that you want to if you really want to do it. And just because he's got some differences, and we've said this all the way along to him, you know, your brain just works in a different way to other people's. It doesn't mean you're any less capable.
Look at these. Don't they look delicious?
Oh, they look gorgeous.
Hearts. We've done it. We've cracked it, Sunshine. Some of them look a little bit less like hearts.
You must have one of those names. Yeah, that goes no terrorist. Yeah, it's a Samson.
In the workplace, oftentimes the speed of performing tasks can be a bit longer than someone that is neurotypical. So they may be given a task, shown how to do it. They'll have the same sort of induction process as another employee, but oftentimes their ability to do the job faster doesn't come, and they may need a lot more input in terms of learning processes and learning that planning and sequencing can often be an issue for them.
For the adults I have seen, most of them end up coming to see me because something's not working. So they get to university and the strategies they had at high school don't cut it anymore. So they get overwhelmed because as you get older, you're meant to have more independence and be more able to plan and organise things yourself, and they just can't do it.
Yeah.
How did you feel when you were told that you had this thing called dyspraxia?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how I felt about it having a name or whatever. I should note I was also diagnosed with dyslexia at the same time, and for me it's been a kind of conjoined issue, but I felt very frustrated about how it's affected me organisationally and how I struggled through school. So I'm not sure about how I felt about it as a diagnosis, but I did definitely feel very frustrated about it in general.
The school was concerned that he was not fitting into the classroom, and they suggested that he might be deaf, and he had a series of tests, and he was seen by the Child Development Service and a paediatrician and diagnosed with dyspraxia. I think dealing with the teachers that were responsible for Michael's learning all the way through, that was a challenge, because a lot of people didn't really understand, even though the education was available and the communication was there, they didn't really understand what dyspraxia meant. And so the expectations that they put on him, particularly at tertiary and secondary level, was just doomed to failure in a lot of cases, because it was just like, well, keep a diary, just record them, just do the homework, and they couldn't understand why that was just such a big ask.
One of the things I would like to see very different for kids with dyspraxia and other learning differences is that we set the classrooms up differently. I mean, the kids I know with dyspraxia struggle in class because the teachers don't understand that the children need organisation and structure. And as the kids get older and they're expected to be more independent, that organisation and structure is taken away and the children with dyspraxia just fall over.
Has it affected you being able to do what you really enjoy doing, the activities that you might enjoy?
Yes.
Say sports or whatever?
Yes, I mean, I'd say it's affected pretty much every aspect of my life. I mean, because of, well, the big thing is organisational, and that's kind of comes, that's sort of with anything you do, really. But I mean, not driving has been a big thing with that. And
so you're not able to drive?
No, I mean, I've had lessons and I have been in the car and driven around a bit, but in terms of just like being on the road and I sort of
so there's probably a difficulty with distinguishing left from right.
Yeah, it's a little bit there, like, and my left and right's pretty good now, but still sometimes it can get wrong, and I didn't want to, you know, it's like if you hit the gas instead of brakes or something, and it's just, especially if you're on the road and you're surrounded by cars and you have to sort of keep in line and go at speed, and that just very nerve-wracking. So I first discovered painting sort of almost by chance. I was doing photography at school.
Right.
And I went into art school through photography, and in the painting course there, they talked about painting through action, which is the idea is like making a painting by doing one thing, like to drip or to tilt or to pour. And when I understood that painting could be done that way, as accumulation of action, as documentation of action itself, that changed everything I understood about art and just opened up a whole world to me. I just go with the flow of that a bit. It's like, all right, I'm going to lay down a strip of foil, and sometimes I crunch it up to get the crinkles, and then sometimes it rips, or it rips when I'm gluing it down. And you know, as you're pressing it in, there's definitely intent behind it, but there's also a lot of chance.
Yes.
And it's navigating chance, you know.
Yes.
And yeah, it's striking that balance. And actually, I think that's actually relevant to the dyspraxia as well, because I can be uncoordinated. I can miss, you know, with the paint drips. It can turn out completely different from my intention. And in this particular style of painting, that doesn't necessarily matter. That doesn't mean it's ruined. You just have to change it up. You know, you have to embrace it.
It can actually add to it.
Yes, absolutely.
People with dyspraxia just work differently, and often what that means is they think differently as well. So most of the kids I see with dyspraxia, if we're doing an activity that's, I'll start the activity with them, and as long as they're doing the movements I want them to do, they can follow their imagination with it. The way they think about things and their creativity can be just off the charts amazing, but they can't tie their shoelaces.
But I think because he's so sure of himself as an artist, that his communication and his interactions with people in an artistic way at a gallery, or it could be at a gallery that he hasn't even had anything formally to do with, he can go into an exhibition opening and talk with anybody about what he is seeing in a very knowledgeable way, almost like an art critic, because he does know his body of work, and he knows the background is all there, and from his art history and his training.
Are you a happy person?
Oh, yes and no. I'd say, yeah, I can be very happy sometimes, and maybe I'm more up and down than level, not in a kind of manic way, but yeah. I'm very happy with what I've achieved, but I'm aware that I've still got a very long way to go.
Keep going. You can do it. You're good enough. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Get it fuller, more red walnut then.
The reason that we're on this documentary is that we'd love more awareness to be raised around dyspraxia. There are many people out there with dyspraxia who struggle because there is so much for them to have to process in daily life, and they're great people. They just want to get on and live their life, and it would be great if, as a society, we can support them. And it doesn't take much, we've found with Daniel, to be able to adjust, to be able to support him in a way that he needs to be supported. And if we can all adjust and be able to adapt to be able to support people with dyspraxia in that right way, then it'd be great.
Go, Michael, let it go.
Straight into the power pole.
I think just that the children really have lots of potential, and they just need a little bit more resource in those early days, and when they start at school, so that they're understood and so that they can achieve and have success, and you know, just participate alongside everybody else and thrive.
Yeah.
And feel valued. Yeah.
And to remember, it is an under-recognised condition that the research shows us worldwide it affects 5% of the year group. So it's been on the lookout in supporting these children.
And I would say to the parents that you have to advocate for your children, and you have to listen And
probably speak up.
yes, you've got to speak up. Yeah, yeah. You just got to advocate.
You can see because it's holding itself up.
Is it hard?
Yeah.
How's it going?
Look, it's holding itself up.
Yeah, going.
Do we let it go? Do we let it go?
I think when I'm 13, I'll have my superpower.
When you're 13. So, and what will it be, do you know?
Maybe it'll be super strength.
It's, you know, it can be a bit of a superpower. It's not a terrible thing, and it's not a life sentence, and it doesn't mean you can't achieve things. And what I notice is the children who do really well, and I've watched some kids grow up, are the ones where the parents have a really good understanding of how their child works, and the parents go into bat for them every year.
This is to people that struggle with dyspraxia. Don't be scared to ask for help, because we all need help at the end of the day. And asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength, because asking for help can be extremely difficult.
Oh, that's
Oh, you're
Oh my God.
There goes one. That's a great one. Ready? Steady.